give it to you.
All right.
Call the meeting to order and ask everybody to rise and Mr. Orchard, please in the pledge.
Please face the flag and repeat after me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the roll call, please. I don't have a mic. There. Here.
Director Nelman,
Here.
Director Kelly,
Here.
Director Portrait.
Here.
Agenda review. Are there any changes suggested for the agenda?
There are no changes, Chair, but Chair Bennett did want me to let your board know that he was going to be here just a little late. He arrived late in LAX, and hopes to be here before the meeting's over.
Okay. Public comments. Is there anyone who would like to speak to us about an item that is not on the agenda? Seeing no one come forward, we'll go on to board member comments. Our proposed legislation is still moving forward?
Yes, my understanding, and we included in the work plan item today a little bit of update on where that effort is. But Sue Hughes, the county legislative analyst, deputy executive officer, continues to engage our legislatures up in Sacramento. I understand she met with the aides at least in October. Jeff may have some more information.
Still looking for a sponsor.
Okay.
So you don't know who's trying to carry it yet?
Not yet.
Thank you.
Well, they're all running, so they all ought to be eager to carry it. Or maybe not, who knows?
And I would point also, we included a two-page simple fact sheet regarding that process that we're undertaking to help the legislators out, including some of maps we prepared with them with our jurisdictional boundary. So Sue took that up there to Sacramento.
Okay. Thank you. Next is the consent calendar.
Move for approval.
Should we? I was going to ask if we should take them individually if there's no motion. There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Motion and a second for the consent calendar. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries unanimously. Informational items, Las Posas Basin update. Could we have the staff report, please?
Good afternoon, Chair Craven and directors. For the record, my name is Kathleen Rydell. The Las Posas Users Group has not had a meeting since the last Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency meeting. They are planning on having a meeting a week from today on December 11th. And agency staff has forwarded 2 well applications to be reviewed at that meeting. And I don't know if Robert Aranio has additional words as chair of the Las Posas Users Group.
No.
So that
Robert, you
concludes-
don't want to speak to us?
I'm sure I'll get the opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, we have a question.
Kathleen,
Yes.
in going through, and I was talking with Brian Bondi a couple days ago, the tubes that are going in the well between the column and the casing, we're putting 1.5 inches. New wells, I understood, were supposed to be 2 inches on the outside of the casing, and yet I see 1.5 inches spec'd in these well permits. And which is it?
I am not familiar with a change in that request that Las Posas Users Group has requested a larger diameter.
Well, I don't think it was a function of the users group. I thought it was more a function, well, at Zone, Carol just finished putting a well back together with 1.5 inches in it, and it was some difficulty getting it in and all of that. And I was asking the question, because of the tightness, if there's any warp or anything, it makes it so it's difficult to get a data logger down there. And the answer was, well, if it's a new well where they can put anything they want, they're putting it exterior to the casing, in the gravel, but not perfed in the gravel. It goes down and opens into the casing, is welded, a starter is welded on the very bottom, and then the pipe is fixed to that. And I was told it was a 2-inch on the outside.
I am aware that we have been putting as a condition 1.5 inch, and I know that Brian Bondi has been working with the new well operators. I'm not
Right.
aware of any other changes to that.
Well, I'll try to see if I can get
We can
somebody-
work on that.
Yeah, because when they're putting it, my question started as a simple one: how are you wrapping it with something on the outside, trying to keep the gravel out of the tube, exterior of the casing? And the answer was, it opens with an opening cut through the casing at the point of. They put it just about 5 feet above the screen, and have it so you can actually look into the well, into the column. And then the statement was made, and that's 2-inch pipe, not 1.5 inches, which made me, all of these reference the 1.5 inches, as Kathleen is saying.
So it might be the case that we want to go to the 2-inch?
Well, I would sure ask that we, because when they're sliding it in the hole, they could put a 6-inch if you asked them.
Right.
Not, I mean, if they had a 24-inch hole or something, but certainly the difference between 1.5 inches and a 2-inch would be nothing at that point, but it could be a big thing later.
Let us look into it. We'll get back to your board
Thank
with
you.
the recommendation.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you. Okay, at this point, we are down to action items. Supervisor Bennett, I'm sorry. Oh, is there a receive and file on the
Receive and file?
Second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to receive and file. If there's no objection, so ordered. That gets us down to action items. On the action items, Supervisor Bennett called from the airport and said that his plane had been delayed. He had landed and is on his way. How long ago was that call?
It was just afternoon.
So he should be getting here fairly soon. He asked that we not address the action items until he got here. If we,
being no other item to address.
well, we could take the executive officer's report, which the way today's meeting is going might take 30 seconds. It might take a minute.
Well, you're our chairman today.
But I was going to ask you if we were to wait for Supervisor or take a break until Supervisor Bennett came, how long would you be willing to take a break?
35 seconds. Jeff, do you know what concerns he might have?
I don't. I just know he wanted to see it. He was definitely interested in seeing the water because of the foofara that happened in September about the water levels. He definitely wanted to see that. He just said the action item. So, and he apologized. He actually had left home early. His mother's in poor health, just so he could be at the meeting, and his plane was delayed in Indianapolis, and so that's why he was late getting in.
I wouldn't want to speak for Brian, but in that conversation, I asked him if he knew if anybody had any issues with these as published now, and he thought none. So I was prepared to accept them.
Let's go ahead and take the executive officer's report. Does anybody have any questions on any specific one? If not,
Okay, Jeff, wing it now.
I have really nothing to report.
That's not what we asked for, Jeff. A little more time.
Can I take a minute to look
at this point, usually they read the telephone book or something.
No, there's really nothing to report on that. There was some executive committee meetings, finance meeting, on one of the items, and asked the committee members if they were interested in sharing any of that, but other than that, nothing.
Well, what the executive committee addressed is what we're holding off on. If you think that Supervisor Bennett was most interested in the water trend levels, water level trends, then why don't we go ahead and do item number 6, and we'll see how long that takes. And I believe that might take a bit longer than the other items we've had today. And we could wait, take a break after that and wait for Supervisor Bennett. So could we have the staff report on item number 6, application for transfer of historical application, Solana Verde Mutual Water Company to Crestview Mutual Water Company, in accordance with Section 5.3 of the Ordinance Code.
I'm glad you read that. That was a long one.
I'll accept the executive officer's report.
Is there a second to receive and file the executive officer's report?
Second.
We'd like the executive officer to be better prepared next time with a proper report.
I think the vice chairman should be better prepared next time. I need a little bit more warning from Lynn. He sent me something and said I'm going to be there. Okay, motion and a second to receive and file the executive officer's report. Any objection?
None.
Okay. Motion carries unanimously. Action items. I'm not going to read this title again. Could we have the staff report, please?
We're waiting for the slides to show.
Okay. Well, there we go. 10 minutes.
Well, for the record, my name is Kathleen Rydell, and I'm here to present item 6. And I'm not going through the title again.
And for anybody watching, we're waiting for the slides to come up so she can proceed with her report.
If you throw a rock at their window.
You know, we should see somebody.
Yeah, the lights are on.
Lights are off.
Are you these are?
Oh,
Maybe we can get Henry to come up and do a concert for us or something. You all know he's a world accomplished musician, don't you?
Okay.
okay. The request for transfer of historical allocation was submitted to the agency on May 30th, and it was for all of the entire historical allocation of Solano Verde Mutual Water Company to be transferred over to Crestview Mutual Water Company. Per the Ordinance Code, Section 5.3, allocation may be transferred between M&I extraction facilities, provided there is no net detriment to the aquifer system and it is equitable. In making this determination, at a minimum, the following is to be considered: the location of the extraction facilities, the aquifer system being used, groundwater quality impacts of the transfer, and an overall assessment of cumulative impacts. There were policy implications associated with this transfer, including this one. Solano Verde has historical allocation as a result of extractions during the base period 1985 to 1989. Currently, Solano Verde has no extraction facilities. It is supplying its customers with imported water. Should Solano Verde be allowed to transfer its historical allocation to an operator that will not be supplying Solano Verde's customers with water or using that allocation to supply water to Solano Verde's customers? The Solano Verde Mutual Water Company wells are located in the northeast corner of the West Las Posas Basin. The water company was established in 1981 and provided groundwater from 2 wells. The locations are indicated on the screen. The boundary is shown here on this slide. Solano Verde Mutual Water Company, its service area is about 922 acres. About 533 acres are within the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency boundary. It provides, which means the balance is outside of the agency boundary in the expansion area. Provides water for 15 domestic connections, 38 agricultural connections, and in 1997 and 1999 delivered water for irrigation of 99 acres of mature lemons. Solano Verde extracted groundwater from 2 wells up until 2005. Annual extractions were approximately 200 to 300 acre-feet per year. Wells were destroyed under permit in 2009. Currently, Solano Verde Mutual Water Company provides water supplied by Callegas Municipal Water District. The service area is within the Ventura County Waterworks District number 19 a service area, and I understand that annex has been requested. Annexation. The original historical allocation was 231 acre-feet. There have been 3 historical allocations transfers approved, 2 in 2006 totaling 35 acre-feet, and 1 in 2010 for 51, almost 52 acre-feet per year. Currently, Solano Verde Mutual Water Company has a historical allocation of 145 acre-feet. It also has a baseline allocation of 80 acre-feet, which is not subject to the transfer that we're discussing today. I have prepared 2 slides. This is the southern portion of the Solano Verde service area. The letters green HA shows parcels that were served by, during the historical allocation period, so you can see which parcels were served. The yellow numbers are the baseline allocation. Baseline is associated with parcels. When you see the negative numbers, that means that during historical allocation, such as that one on the left side of the screen, it says minus 6 acre-feet. Originally, in the historical allocation period, they were irrigating 6 more acres than they were during when the baseline was evaluated. Baseline is based on development after 1989 and was determined and approved in December of 2000. So this is the southern portion. There's a red line going across near the upper portion of that slide. That is the edge of the outcrop area. The green that's sort of at the very top, you can see it, a little bit of a green line. That's the edge of the agency boundary. This is the southern portion of their service area, and again, HA marked is those parcels that received water during the historical allocation period, and the yellow numbers are the baseline associated with that parcel. These are the 2 service areas. Solano Verde is up in the northeast corner of the West Las Posas Basin. You'll notice Crestview Mutual Water Company is located near the southwestern corner of the West Las Posas Basin. Portion of it is in the hills between the 2 basins, the Pleasant Valley Basin and the West Las Posas Basin. Crestview Mutual Water Company was formed in 1950. It provides water for 617 domestic connections and 1 M&I connection. It is proposed at full build-out, the maximum number of connections is to be about 700. Crestview Mutual Water Company has a historical allocation of 912 acre-feet per year, baseline allocation of 70 acre-feet per year. Annual reported extractions range from 650 to 900 acre-feet per year, and there's some big variations in that. And Crestview Mutual Water Company supplements its water supply with approximately 220 acre-feet per year of imported water. Crestview Mutual Water Company operates 3 wells. The arrows there indicate the locations of those wells. And you'll note that 2 of the wells are located in a strip between the West Las Posas and the Pleasant Valley Basin. Crestview Mutual Water Company submitted a consultant's report, and provided in that report is the water constituents. It's stiff diagrams. It shows the different constituents in the water. It compared the water quality at the Crestview Mutual Water Company wells to that of wells in the West Las Posas and the Pleasant Valley Basin, also in the Oxnard Plain. It just shows that the primary 2 wells, CV number 4 and CV number 6, are very similar to waters in the West Las Posas Basin. And then CV number 5, which is their backup well, had higher sodium and potassium and also sulfates. So you can see they're very similar to the West Las Posas. For water quality, the consultant's report showed compared in the West Las Posas, the primary basin management objectives are for total dissolved solids and for chlorides. So it showed a comparison between Crestview wells and other wells in the vicinity. You can see on TDS, the total dissolved solids for the Crestview wells generally range from 923 to 1,386 milligrams per liter for total dissolved solids. And that range is somewhat similar to what you see in the West Las Posas Basin. It should be noted that the basin management objective for the West Las Posas Basin is less than 600 milligrams per liter. So all of the wells have concentrations that exceed the basin management objectives. Taking an illustration from the Las Posas Users Group Basin-Specific Groundwater Management Plan, this is their contours on total dissolved solids concentrations. We see that the total dissolved solid concentrations are highest on the western edge of the basin, and they decrease as you go east. The area highlighted in yellow shows an area where the reported concentrations are below that of the basin management objective of 600 milligrams per liter. And so it also indicates that the water recharge to this basin is primarily coming from the Oxnard Plain. That supports that. Whoops. This illustration has the contours prepared by its Ventura County Watershed Protection District, its water levels, so it's potentiometric surface map for 2012. The orangish colored contours are those from the fall of 2012. The blue contours are from the spring of 2012. And I have highlighted the areas where both of the service area, the water companies are operating. Solano Verde up in the northeast, the Crestview Mutual is in the southwest. And you can see that both areas have water levels that are roughly more than 80 feet below sea level. So both areas have about the same depressed water levels. About 60% or more of the West Las Posas Basin has water levels that are below sea level. And it just shows that the one where Crestview is located, it's close to the Oxnard Plain, drawing in the poor quality water. The basin seems to be receiving water from the Oxnard Plain. Solano Verde, that area can be receiving recharge from the mountains and from the outcrop area also. This is a bar graph of extractions, reported groundwater extractions in the West Las Posas Basin. It's just to give you a little perspective on what we're talking about here. The black line above the 2012 bar, it represents the adjusted historical allocation that would be available for Crestview Mutual Water Company should this transfer go through, that they would be able to increase extractions by, and that's 108 acre feet. So to put it into perspective, I show extractions from the West Las Posas Basin. I also show extractions within the cone of depression where Crestview Mutual Water Company is operating. The proposed extractions are equivalent to 14% of the 5-year average of Crestview Mutual Water Company's reported extractions during 2008 to 2012. It is equivalent to 4% of the 5-year average of extractions within the Kona Depression, and it represents 0.9% of the average reported groundwater extractions within the West Las Posas Basin. A report was provided by Crestview Mutual Water Company. The consultant Numeric Solutions, in their report, they discussed the hydrogeology. They compared the geochemical analysis, which I showed you that page earlier. They evaluated groundwater extractions within a 1-mile radius of the Crestview Mutual Water Company wells. The actual Kona Depression extended beyond that 1-mile radius, which was the additional extraction shown on the previous slide. It discussed water quality, and it presented data on the basin management objectives. It did not discuss that the total dissolved solids concentrations in the basin exceed the basin management objectives, except for on the far east side. And the bottom line was the consultant concluded that the transfer would present no net detriment. The transfer of allocation was discussed at the Executive Committee, presented to the Executive Committee on August 12th. At that time, the Executive Committee had requested the applicant, and it was Crestview Mutual Water Company, provide a report, which was the Numeric Solutions report. It was provided. Staff was to present the policy implications as a separate item at the September 13th Executive Committee meeting, and that was done. The item came back to the Executive Committee on November 15th, and the Executive Committee instructed staff to take this item to the board on December 4th, so I'm here today. And Agency Council was to confirm that allocations are established under the ordinance code and that agency has the authority to impose the condition. And we'll go to that in the recommendations at the end of this board letter. In conclusion, the proposal is to remove all remaining historical allocation associated with Solano Verde's account, leaving only 80 acre-feet of baseline allocation on the account. There is no indication that the water demand has declined. Options available for the board to consider include: grant the allocation transfer as requested, do not grant the allocation transfer, but require allocation be assigned to the water purveyor that provides water to the Solano Verde customers, do not grant the allocation transfer, or grant the allocation transfer with the condition that an alternative allocation is not available to parcels within the Solano Verde service area. It is the recommendation of the Executive Committee and staff's recommendation to approve the transfer of historical allocation with the condition that an alternative allocation may not be applied for by owners or operators of extraction facilities located on parcels once served by Solano Verde Mutual Water Company, and the notice of this restriction is recorded on such parcels. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Mr. Bennett?
Just want to make sure that all of the property owners will be notified and that these conditions will take place before the transfer actually takes place.
We would have to have a notice and a documentation that the condition was recorded on all the parcels
And will the
before
property,
we would transfer any allocation.
and will the property owners have to be notified for that to be recorded, I assume?
I assume.
Yes.
Right, thank you.
That would have to happen.
Thank you.
Well, they're all party to the transaction, I would expect.
Perhaps the applicant can tell us.
Okay, are there any other questions for Kathleen? Because I'm sure Robert has a presentation to make, and we can ask questions of him.
Yeah, Kathleen, put back the previous slide with our choices. All right, okay. All right, thank you.
I would just like to, did you have a question? I wanted to add that on the recommendation from the committee, which consists of Chair Mulhart and me, that I had said that I was really confused over this whole issue and had to think about it even more and read more about it, and that I did reserve the right to change my mind later. Yes?
And have you?
Yeah, I think I have. But I haven't heard everything yet, Robert.
Okay. Al, I have a quick question. You reviewed everything as far as our ordinances and so forth, and our choices up there are good to go?
Yes, those are all allowable options, and the recommended option is consistent with the ordinance code.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Welcome, Robert.
Okay.
Currently, that area is receiving water from Callegas,
Yes.
100%. And there is a request in place for District 19 to annex the area?
That's correct. And that's because Callegas isn't really in a position to serve water directly. They need 19 to do it for them.
So the idea is 19 would wheel the imported water to the residents?
Essentially, they would become part of District 19, and they would pay Callegas prices. They, I don't know if it's germane to the conversation or not, but when District 9 was approached, 19 told them that should they put their historical allocation into District 19's pocket, that their charges would be less than full price for Callegas water. But it's my understanding they weren't interested in that because they were getting a better price from Crestview Mutual.
In the discussions at LPUG, and I'm sure we'll hear about it, but the point was made, because I watched it happen, at the terminus of the Callegas line, there's two turnouts, one going to District 19 and one going north to Solano Verde. And that was confirmed by Ms. Mulligan. And they were actually yoked at one point. They're separate now, my understanding, from Ready. But there's nothing to prevent in the future and future administrations of 19 that not be joined again, so that they would get a mixed blend. And in so doing, they would be violating the point, because Ready or his successors are going to pump local water. And so it seemed like perhaps that this restriction should be such that Solano Verde not be allowed to receive water that from 19 that had an origin other than import. But I see nothing in that language here.
And I wasn't at the executive committee. I don't think that was discussed. This is a new point being made.
Well, let's hear what Robert has
yes,
to say,
yeah.
and then let's get into discussion. Or maybe I should say, let's hear what Robert has to say.
Good afternoon. Robert Aranio on behalf of Crestview Mutual, the applicant, or one of the two applicants. In answer to your question about notification, the Solano Verde Board of Directors passed their resolution unanimously requesting that Crestview go ahead and purchase this allocation from them. There was negotiations with the county, and basically what you have here is Solano Verde Water District is 36 shareholders total, and they're just tired of being in the water business. I've been their operator out there for 20 years, have stepped them through how their wells died, what's going on out there, kept them informed what happens here at GMA, and keep the system running. And basically the people that live out there are just tired of being in the water business. That's not what they do for a living. It's not what they want to do as a hobby. They just want to have someone take over their problems. They're tired of having to make decisions and try and find people to serve on the board. And so they want to annex to the county, and frankly, we came up with a better offer for their water rights in order to do that. That's the bottom line here. Yes, ma'am.
You were very careful to correct us that it wasn't water rights, it's historical
You're absolutely
allocation.
correct,
So
yes.
I just want to make sure
Yes,
that in
thank
the
you.
record,
Thank you
it's
for that.
historical allocation.
Yeah, my apologies, and that was a misuse of words. Moving of the historical allocation. It does also happen to fit with the basin management that we're looking at in the Las Posas Basin Users Group. I know staff has presented a slide here showing that water levels in and around the Crestview area were as much as 80 feet below sea level. I disagree with that. Your next presentation that you're going to see on item 7 will dispute that. My water levels have never been at 80 feet. I will admit that they are below sea level, as they are throughout the basin, but they are not nearly as bad or as depressed or as difficult to recharge and regenerate as it is in the Solano Verde area. I also have a contention about staff with the discussion as it goes to basin management objectives and the fact that our wells and our water quality does not meet that. And yet the only place that it does meet that is in absolutely the worst area of the basin that you want to be pumping water from, in the middle of the depression, underneath the Somas Nut House. It's the only place that the water quality meets the basin management objectives in the West Las Posas Basin. Everywhere else, it is greater than 600. So do we move pumping to where the hole is? Do we increase pumping where the hole is? The reality of the matter is, if the annexation to County Waterworks goes through and the allocation doesn't move, the pumping will occur. And it will occur in that depression, because that's where the extraction facilities are for the County Waterworks District. Our report met all the conditions of the ordinance code requirements, and we addressed all of staff's concerns with the issues and questions they had from the August Executive Committee. I'm here today to answer questions, but I support staff's recommendations. The Solano Verde Board of Directors supports staff's recommendations, and we ask you to please forward them. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Do you have a question of Robert?
Yeah, I think Robert confirmed what I was just saying earlier, that 19 number 2 and 19 number 3 are both. Number 2 is a little north edge of the depression. Number 3 is right in it. Mm-hmm. And so, that goes right back to the fear that once they are a member of County Water 19, and County Water 19 is within the organization decision, reverts back to delivering water from their mixed water, that very easily could contain a large amount. The report they sent me in the mail last year, I think they had something over 80% of their delivery was local. They contradicted themselves on public statement at one of the LPUG meetings, but their published thing was that a majority of their water was local water in their most recent pumpings. So I have a fear that exactly the scenario you indicated will in fact happen in a bit, unless this restriction was extended to include that the future water delivered to Solano Verde will consist of exclusively imported water. Thank you.
I don't think that was a question.
Yeah,
I have
You have a question?
I
Okay.
just have questions about Director Kelly's.
Okay, are there any questions of Robert? Okay, thank you, Robert.
thank you.
Now,
This is the interesting thing about having a committee. Did that come up at the committee? And
No.
Did you guys? Because that issue hasn't been raised at all. So I'd like to hear what staff's thoughts are about Director Kelly's comments, and I'd like to also hear from council about that.
My immediate response is just surprised that we overlooked that. When I talked with Reddy about the Waterworks 19, he's insisted that he was just going to use Cayugas water, but or he was going to charge them Cayugas prices, excuse me. It's not been clear that he was going to use exclusively Cayugas water. So it may be prudent to see how that would impact the ability of Waterworks District 19 to take them into the fold. It's a new issue for us.
The delivery point there is at the corner of Green Tree and Bradley. That's where the terminus of the steel line that Cayugas put in. From there, it runs north in a plastic line to the booster station. They have about a mile north of that intersection. But the possibility is very, very easy to accomplish, to have that source changed. It could be done in a heartbeat. And I thought for a period of time it was done. I remember at the time they were trying to discuss an alternate source. Currently, District 19's water crosses about at the terminus of Burrowwood. And if there was there's another line on Green Tree, and that was going to make it a secondary source of water to be taken to the tanks on the hill if they had a maintenance issue. So the whole thing was discussed out at great length at the time that Cayugas line was being put in. Thank you.
I have another question. So a question I have for staff, with this being sort of new, and I'd like to make sure we make sound decisions and we've thought it all through and stuff as we go forward. Is there any reason why this has to move this time? Can we table this and just bring it back up at the next meeting so that we've got full analysis of the...
So we can't Waterworks District 19 input? I would think so. From staff's perspective, there's not a reason why it can't wait till January.
Anybody see a problem with that?
I see no problem.
Council? Any problem with that? And then Director Craven, you said you may have different thinking. Now that you've heard everything, do you have any different thinking?
Well, I hadn't even thought about, obviously, what Director Kelly had brought up. Let me just tell you what I've been puzzling about ever since this first came to us. And it's transfer of historical allocation. And historical allocation, to me, is something that was generated on an area. And by transferring historical allocation, we're just playing games. We're trying to change history. If you're given something that was historical to this, and a lot of the theory of when they set this all up was designed on historical allocation, then I don't see how we can transfer. I mean, I understand legally we can. I just don't think it goes with the way the whole purpose. Further, if they are not pumping it, and Crestview has a good chance of pumping it, then we're talking 145 acre feet a year. Then I think that could have some kind of a detriment to the basin. I mean, those are, in my simple-minded way, this is what I've been thinking and trying to work around. So I don't know if we have longer, maybe I can think longer about it.
So with two pieces of information, Director Kelly's comments and now a change in the executive committee, one of the executive committee members' thoughts about it, and I'd like to make the motion to just table this to our next meeting so that we can make sure we thoroughly...
Could I add one more comment on,
Sure.
on the, your feelings are very correct. There's one thing I would point to you, though, is that if you notice, this was, I think, in the outcrop area, much of it. And so if imported water was delivered and irrigated on the outcrop, you could, in fact, find that water helping to increase the amount of perk that goes into the aquifer.
But that's what's being done now.
It's being done, yes, as we speak, because it is 100% imported water right now. And as long as the imported water was the sole source of water for Solano Verde, that in fact is just a very similar to United Spreading Grounds, only it's been done with sprinklers, because it is the outcrop, and that's very porous and whatever. The one thing to be concerned about is things I've brought before you before, and that is the nature of the fertilizer application allowed in the outcrop. That in past years was an issue that was debated and enforced, and we kind of have lost sight of that, I think, in our current thinking. And so allowing animal confinement and heavy fertilizer and storage of manures and all those things were previously looked at in a negative manner on the outcrop. And certainly, though, the use of imported water on the outcrop, by definition, that's potable water,
and therefore that should not be a negative effect. It should actually almost be a positive effect as long as it is enforced. Thank you.
So I'd like to make the motion to table this to our next meeting to allow staff, the stakeholders, and the public to communicate and the directors to investigate the two issues in particular raised in the context of this request.
I'll second that.
Oh, just wait, give Robert a chance to come back. He has a comment.
Sure.
Before we move ahead.
Robert.
I'm arranging deck chairs on the Titanic. You brought up a point of a concern about the County Waterworks District moving well water up to Solana Verde. There's no net benefit for them to do that. County Waterworks District has been using all their allocation each and every year. And if they were to go ahead and tie in, invest money, and start delivering well water, it just means they have to bring in imported water to another area. It's a zero-sum gain for them to do that. And actually, they have to invest money to be able to do it. They're using all their allocation every year. They're not banking anything. So if you take 108 acre feet net, 145 gross. If you take that 108 acre feet and you start delivering that from well water now, they have to buy 108 acre feet over here in some other part of the district. And they don't gain anything from it. The expenses are still the same. So while yes, mechanically it's possible, there's no benefit for them to invest or to go about doing that practice. And it doesn't harm the basin if they did. Thank you.
The 19 number 2 is about half mile maybe from the terminus of the Cayugas line. So it's the whole scenario as I've described to you is very easy to have it accomplished. I question the issue, and wasn't prepared to bring today. I should have brought it. The annual publication by water purveyor 19 and 1 with regard to their product as compared to the deliveries to BARD and where the source is. Mm-hmm. And the statement was made in there that the majority of their water was local water. So they're, in spite of your feeling that they're maxed out, they seem to be providing a majority of their product locally. And I see no reason to think that they wouldn't go ahead and blend that up or do whatever they do with it. Whether they borrow here and buy it from Peter and pay Paul, that's a whole other issue. But I'm just saying that if you bind people to what they need to do, then they're bound to it. They can't change. And I would have to tell you that certainly Zone Mutual we have an agreement to use blended water from Cayugas, and it was being wheeled for a period of time by 19. And we began to have degraded water that was as bad as the water we were, not as bad, getting close to as bad as we were trying to blend with to bring it up to help comply with the LA regional demand that we blend down water and use the bad water. Mm-hmm. And we found that we were not able to achieve a blend down suitable because, by golly, 19 was giving us local water and not our Cayugas water. Ultimate out that was that we now have our own turnout back so as not to allow 1 and 19 to pull that on us again.
Okay.
So to say that they are a totally trustworthy organization leaves something to be decided.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else that anybody would like, if we're going to be delaying it, is there anything else anybody would like brought up? Your motion mentioned these things. I'm just wondering if there's anybody else has anything they'd like to be further explained or looked into.
Yeah, let's just go to the next slide one more time. Pass the 4 choices, the one that you're recommending. Now, moving forward with that, if they so choose to go down the line to go back into the water business, which sounds like they will never make it or want to or have the desire, they could still do so, but they'd have to pay the penalty rate.
They have to pay the surcharge.
Right.
if they use
Yeah, they don't have any
groundwater.
allocations. They would pull the full, they would pay the full penalty.
Some of the
Yes.
parcels do.
Let me answer that, Kathleen. They always have, the way we work, they always have the ability in the future to go drill more wells. If they drill more wells, they won't be eligible for any of the allocation schemes currently approved by the GMA board. So they would be paying the penalty on every acre foot they pumped.
Right.
I think that was your question.
Right, that's,
One of the fears was in the early discussions was they would just throw themselves onto efficiency, and that this precludes them from doing
That's
that.
correct. That's correct.
just thought I'd bring that up as a
Right.
thought.
And that was discussed at the executive meeting.
What becomes of the remaining 80 acre feet of baseline that stays?
It stays.
And it
So
stays
the-
with the parcel. It's associated with the parcels as shown on the 2 slides that I broke down, and I showed what parcels are assigned what baseline.
So there is still some remaining allocation in the area that they could use to extract.
That's
And-
correct.
The rhetorical question, in the bookkeeping mechanisms, this 80 acre feet, and if they continue to use imported, does that 80 acre credit, annual allocation accumulate so that over 10 years now they have 800 feet of accumulated?
The answer to that is no. They only accumulate conservation credits on historical allocation.
But if they're not using any water at all, they're conserving it.
That's not an historical allocation. It's a
Okay.
baseline allocation.
Yeah, there's a difference.
Any other questions? Any other concerns? Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Alec, can you just restate what we're going to have staff review?
Did you get his motion?
Are you into it?
I have the motion from Director Bennett to table the item so that the staff can go over the 2 issues as presented by the directors and staff.
Director Craven and Director Kelly. And the stakeholders can weigh in. Directors can also investigate.
Right.
Are we going to take that back to a committee?
I'll leave that to the committee members to direct.
My motion wouldn't be to do that.
I think that would
just think-
delay it.
You'd have a committee meeting before your next board meeting, would you not?
We could, and so to my way, that's not, as we understand the motion, that's not part of the motion, but if they wanted it, we would take it back.
I would recommend we do that. So we make sure we get everything out on, and prepared and reviewed, and those that want to attend can hear it, and then when we get back here, we'll be more specifically guided to what our direction would be. I would like to add that to the motion.
That's not something that, I wasn't here when you guys went to committees, and I think this is just an example of, for me, one of the problems with sort of the committee thing. This is going to come back with a recommendation from the committee, then we're not at the committee, and all that information that was presented, I think it'd be better for the item to come. The committee's had one shot at it.
I've had a couple.
I was going
Had
to
a
say
couple
they've had
shots.
several. It's been an
Sure.
ongoing process.
Right.
So we're
So-
95% plus there.
Well, that's fine if the directors wanted to go to the committee, that's fine. That's not what I want to do, so I wouldn't change the motion to do that.
Well, let me tell you, with Lynn's schedule, and it might be difficult to get it to a committee and then back before the January meeting. Would that sway your thinking?
I think the good process of the committees that we put in place is to help move the GMA along, so we're not taking a process of 6 months to get somewhere. Process of the committee
Well,
is
this
to
has
help.
taken since May with
Right,
committees.
I'm just saying. Well, historically,
Yeah.
it's taken longer
Yeah.
with the board and the way, with the Brown Act and everything, with this way, more things are brought up at a committee level where staff can interact and get information back and forth along with the public available.
Madam Chairman, if we could ask Robert,
I would think,
do you have an instant need for these credits? I mean, it seems to me you're functioning along this is for a future potential use.
Crestview Water District has been involved in this, as I said, since May. Our fiscal year started December 1. We do have business actions and business plans that are in place on this, not only how to move our assets, but how we're going to go ahead and manage our assets going forward. So timeliness is importance to us. There you go.
But you're not going to start milking this cow right away.
Our wells are currently offline for this year, and we are purchasing imported water. So this month of December, no, I'm not going to restart them for this. It is simply a matter of how does it affect our cash flow, and how does it affect our water rates for next year, which go into effect January 1st. That's whereabouts this has a real impact to us, and dragging this out does not do us any favors.
And your wells are offline because you exercise all of your historical?
For this year, yes.
Okay.
And that's a practice we do. We pump up to our historical.
Okay. So you're starting a new calendar year, not
January 1.
GMA things. So it'll be after January 1, the first opportunity to use these historicals.
Correct. As it would seem now, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Although it would be helpful if we could get the transfer done this year and have it hit this year's books.
I respect your different view in terms of how it comes back, and what I just suggest is, I mean, if you want to make an amendment and see if 3 people want it to go to committee, I'm not comfortable changing the motion because I don't think it should go to committee. I think it should just come back, so I'm happy to do that. I mean, it gives
I
you a
just,
chance
you know,
to
it's,
find it.
the process of moving into a committee process took many years to get to where it is. I hate to just throw it out. If Lynn's not able to make it, then there's no committee meeting. Then it comes back here without one. But I think we ought to at least get the attempt.
So are you proposing an amendment, Mr. Bennett's?
Yes.
Okay, do we need a second to an amendment?
You need a second.
You need is there a second to the amendment?
I'd second it. I agree with Dan.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. We vote on the amendment first. So all those in favor of sending it to the executive committee, please say aye.
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 Those against?
No.
Aye.
No.
Okay, I'll say no. Motion does not carry. Now, we vote on the motion, the original motion, and I believe everybody understands the original motion. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, motion carries 4-1.
Chair, if I could just make
Yes.
one more little comment, that kind of in closing, that there's been discussions at LPUG about the desirability of interconnectability of various systems, zone and District 19, District 1, and with the concepts of emergency supplies and be able to move water around should the pipeline to Bard Lake become damaged in an earthquake or what have you. And those discussions seem to be counter this idea of distinctly segregating one pipeline to only deliver imported water. We may decide, or others may decide, that at some point in the future, certain amounts of connectability is desirable, just on emergency needs. So it's just one more thing I'd throw into the mix.
Okay. Okay.
I appreciate that, and I think on an emergency basis, everything's different than, sort of a belief that somebody may be year after year making a change.
And it goes deeper in that it's possibly the way to solve a lot of the issues out there by wheeling recycled waters through various pipelines, and so it's part of the grand plan.
One of the big problems, Supervisor Bennett, is that we have a lot of non-potable lines. And so those, of course, can't be co-mixed unless we have, and District 19 has been looking at Purple Line, and they have expressed no interest in making a duplicate system. So for the foreseeable future, ag water is guided by the Leafy Greens Initiative rules, and some which you and I have discussed in the past, but certainly not to total potable standards. And the co-mixing of reclaimed waters also have the same issues. So that's a whole project on itself, and right now that feasibility it would be primarily delivering non-potable water if you include any of the non-potable sources right now.
Okay, any other discussion on that item? We will move on to the next item, which is agency-wide water level trends. Could we have the staff report on that, please?
So, for the record, let's see. We have the next set of slides. For the record, my name is Kathleen Rydell, here to present item 7, agency-wide water level trends. Agency staff
Let me
is...
guess, they're going down?
What? I'll show you some fluctuations in the water table. Agency staff is working towards developing tools that can be used to present a volume of information and provide your board with the context in which to make important policy decisions. The tools developed would be data sources for your board to consider as part of the decision-making process. The tool presented here today is a series of water level surface maps, also known as potentiometric surface maps. It is an attempt to show the bigger picture of water level trends in groundwater conditions, regional and agency-wide. There are many tools available to evaluate groundwater conditions and the effectiveness of management strategies. Among these are basin management objective report cards, water level surface maps, other maps such as land use maps, water quality maps, pumping patterns. The 2012 Basin Management Objective Report Cards were presented to your board in July at the July 24th board meeting. Here are some examples of potentiometric surface maps. You can see that they were prepared by different parties and agencies, and these are from showing either all of the agency or portions of the agency basins. United Water Conservation District has a fall 2011 map there. Ventura County Watershed Protection District, that's spring 2008. Hopkins is a consultant showing Pleasant Valley Basin. And then we have the Las Posas Users Group showing water levels in their basin-specific groundwater management plan. So they're prepared by many different agencies. Water level surface maps are available, are most commonly not agency-wide. They are for a limited number of years. They do not distinguish in which seasonal period the displayed data was collected, and they may not indicate the data collection points or data used to develop the maps. Additionally, agency staff is in the process of preparing an update to the 2007 groundwater management plan. In preparation for this task, agency staff is and will be reviewing groundwater conditions in the basins and evaluating the effectiveness of current management strategies to determine what revisions need to be made or additional strategies need to be added. A series of maps that is being presented today are for both the upper and lower aquifer systems, based on data collected from a number of different agencies, the County of Ventura, United Water Conservation District, Cayugas Municipal Water District, and others. It is, an effort was made to use only data obtained from wells that extract groundwater from either the upper or the lower aquifer. We went through on a QA/QC process and are trying to eliminate those wells that extract water from both the upper and lower aquifer system, as they're not reflective of either aquifer system. Initial contouring was generated by a GIS software program and then manually adjusted to better reflect edge of basin conditions. The maps that we're showing today are consistent in areal extent, display the data collection points, contour intervals are consistent, geographic reference information, and they were prepared for the fall season of even years between 1972 and 2012.
Excuse me, what does QA and QC mean?
Quality assurance, quality control.
Thank you.
It's just going through and making sure consistency, accuracy. So the initial maps were submitted and included in the agenda packet for the board meeting on September 25th. The item was pulled for further review and data collection. The revised maps were presented to the Operations Committee on October 10th, 2013. Staff was directed by the committee to add additional data, and we were requested to go out and request additional data, and we did receive additional data. A disclaimer was added to the maps at the direction of the committee. We did add geographic references such as cities and roads and made them more visible on the maps. The maps were to be taken to a technical meeting, and we in fact had 3 technical group meetings held on October 28th, November 6th, and November 20th, and the maps were refined for each one of these meetings. The original maps included a rainfall bar graph in the corner, and the technical group decided that a cumulative departure rainfall graph would be a more useful tool. So I have prepared a cumulative departure from the average rainfall. You can see that it goes from 1967 to 2012. I have the maps, potentiometric surface maps we're presenting today are from 1972 to 2012, so that you can see that it will include both above average and below average rainfall periods. So when the lines, when you're reading and looking at the graph from left to right, if the line is ascending, that's above average rainfall. If the line is descending, it's below average rainfall. So this is one of the upper aquifer system maps. And you can see the legends are consistent on both the upper and lower aquifer system maps. Those that are colored in yellows, oranges, and reds are below sea level. Those areas colored in greens and blues shades, those are above sea level. I have included on the maps are the BMO monitoring wells, as well as the black dots represent the data collection points. And the numbers associated with those points are the readings at those locations. The disclaimer you can see is in the upper right-hand corner. So I will go through a series of both the upper and lower aquifer system potentiometric or water level maps. You have those included as inserts in your agenda packet. And I will just flip through these series. And I'll see if the timing, if I need to speed it up or slow it down, if you want me to speak up, if you want me to change the speed. Whoa.
Kathleen, maybe you could mention the year.
Okay. So this is 1990, 1992, 1994, 1996, 1998, 2000, 2002, 2004, 2006, 2008, 2010, 2012. So now we'll go through the lower aquifer system. 1972, 1974, 1976, 1978, 1980, 1982, 1984, 1986, 1988, 1990, 1992, 1994, 1996, 1998, 2000, 2002, 2004, 2000, seems like we skipped 6, 2008, 2010, 2012. So as we went through these slides, you saw that certain areas tended to have water levels that were below sea level pretty consistently. Some of those were on the southeast corner of the Oxnard Plain. Pleasant Valley Basin had some depressed water levels, and consistently in the northeast corner of the West Las Posas Basin. There are probably many different explanations for some of the drawdown, including extractions, rainfall, different factors. It is our hope that this is one in a series of tools that we prepare for the board to put into context, to provide all the data in a format that's easily used by the board in their decision-making processes. And so, thank you for listening to this presentation today. We look forward to your feedback regarding using the tool provided today, and we look forward to receiving feedback for the potential tools that we may develop in the future, and request that you receive and file this report.
Okay, are there any questions?
Yeah, this is kind of like watching a weather map over time. So it's kind of a visual aid is what you're really presenting. Is that fair analysis, Jeff?
It is.
Okay.
And it's, yeah, I should point out that to build this stuff is it's time intensive. To maintain it is not. So it's not been done before. But there are a lot of things that jump out at you as you watch the things move back and forth. One that just jumps out at me is that the one-size-fits-all basin management tools we have, like the 100,000 acre-foot safe yield, just it doesn't really apply. You saw in the Las Posas, for example, it stayed continually blue, where they've made this contention they don't really have a water quantity problem, they have a water quality problem. But get to see it in context. And these water levels represent several different variables, as Kathleen points out. And the next level of detail might be trying to do a sensitivity analysis and seeing which of the variables the water surfaces are most sensitive to. Whether it's pumping patterns, rainfall, or both, or cropping patterns. So anyway, it's something we think can be very effective. And we just wanted to let your board know we're going down that road and just see if you agreed with us, if you found it useful.
Do you have more questions?
Yeah, Kathleen, if you would, and I looked all through, I hadn't seen the rainfall graph that you had.
The cumulative net departure from average rainfall?
That was, I got implied it was with our group, but it's not here, is it?
It is not included. It was completed. It was one of those things that was requested at the technical group meeting.
It was completed this afternoon. So
Okay.
she was working on it
So
my last
can the post office Eagle carry me one of those over?
Sure.
Can you mail it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Email it? Or no, you want it by U.S. Postal? Okay.
47-cent stamp.
Hand this to Mike. This will help him.
Special delivery.
Quick, I got delivery.
The Eagle didn't deliver it.
Obama should be proud of this post office.
Okay, well, maybe you could email it to the rest of us.
Yes.
Okay, other questions? Okay, thank you for the questions. I have comments coming up.
The whole process we went through here from the technical side actually worked better than I think anybody expected. We got meetings put together on pretty short notice. You saw how many meetings there were over a 2-month period in there. And I just recommend that when we have issues like this, where there are a lot of people need to be involved, or that we repeat this process, because I think everybody agreed it worked really well. I just have one comment about how perhaps we should use these maps. There are two different kind of data collection periods that people use, fall and spring. And you get quite different information between the two of those. And in this case, and to really see completely in the basin, you actually need to do both of them, fall and spring, twice as much work, of course. What the fall does is tell you what the basin looks like at its biggest stress period. and that's useful. The problem about fall is that water levels, you have a lot of wells that are pumping, so it's very hard to get a static water level in some places where there's a lot of pumping. You're seeing pumping water levels instead. Again, that's something that's informative. The spring gives you something where the basin is a little more at rest, and so you get to see how the basin recovers after a recharge event. And that's different kind of information. The water levels are quite different. Sometimes even patterns look a bit different. So for a complete look, and I don't suggest that the staff do that immediately, but for a complete look, you really have to have both fall and spring.
Thank you.
I would just like to add, I like what you've put together, and obviously you had a lot of technical group behind it, so that was excellent, and I think this is a great visual aid to help us.
Okay, they would like some feedback. So, oh, I'm sorry.
Surprise. Steve Nash, Oxnard. And a couple of items I want to thank the GMA staff for putting this together. I think it's a fantastic visual aid that needed to be done. And it kind of got away from me earlier, but also on with the executive office's report on the review and comments on the preparation of the draft EIR. I thought that the response letter was fantastic also. So here we have a situation. First, let me start off by saying we had a presentation by Mr. Solomon last night at our city council meeting, and if it's not a water volume issue, it's, as Jeff said, that it's a water quality issue. We're looking at having to spend vast amounts of money to treat the water, to bring it up to a standard where people can use it, and also to ensure that we have the storage capacity and everything else that infrastructure demands. So, I personally think it's still a volume issue, and I don't know if it would be possible due to constraints on staff time and resources and such, but just to do a extrapolation into the future, using various standards. If we are in sustainable yield, or if we are at a certain a percentage overdraft, where will we be in 20, 30, 40, 50 years? I don't believe I've really seen that, but now that we're figuring out where we are, I think we can also try to figure out where we're going to be in the future. So anyway, good work, staff, and thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments? Okay. So they wanted questions to answer, be able to answer our questions, and they also wanted feedback. So we have feedback other than the questions we've asked on how to use the maps.
I think if they could be reduced to flashcard size, one-sided, then we can thumb them like a Walt Disney early cartoon.
Well, in fact, that's the idea. There is an animation in PowerPoint, but Kathleen was running into some technical difficulties. We'll have that for you next time.
Okay. Yes.
I guess I'd offer if anybody has anything else, but the charge of the Fox Canyon agency is to manage the basin, and for intelligent decisions to be made and intelligent input to be offered by stakeholders, et cetera. We have to, as best as we can, understand what's going on. So I appreciate the suggestion that we should be predicting in the future. Quite frankly, I think that this is just a beginning of trying to understand what's going on. There are many other factors, water quality, and I really appreciated hearing Dr. Bachman say that the technical meetings went better than he expected, because that's really what we ultimately want to get to. I know when this first surfaced, there was concern out there, and I think that the fact that we recognize nobody says these are perfect, definitive, absolute, take them to the bank. They are just
sort of the best that staff could come up with, and then they get refined with information from stakeholders at technical meetings, and we just say it's the best that we can do as we go forward. So I applaud it. I think it's one of the things that has been, you can't get that from any one other source, and the people ought to be able to turn to the Fox Canyon Groundwater Agency and be able to say, can you give us a reasonable picture of what's going on? So it's very appropriate for us to keep going down the road this way. And again, I really appreciate Dr. Bachman's comments, because I know when we had our committee meeting, we talked about doing that. We were hoping that just that would happen. People would go, okay, everybody's open to let's hear it all, let's get it all out there, and try to see what we can come up with. So
I thought the staff responded very positively to the overall input that our meeting had, so it was a good deal.
Okay, the only thing to add to that, Jeff, if there's a time restraint with staff time, like Steve said, there's really 2 windows of time to review. Choose one, pick one or the other, and then.
Well, it's our intention to try and do both, and we agree with Dr. Bachman. We were just giving you sort of our first shot. Yeah. We picked the low end of the spectrum.
Yeah, from a policy standpoint, having both and knowing what recharges quickly and what doesn't recharge quickly would be really valuable.
Right.
Yeah, great.
Anything else? Okay, is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second.
Man, it's hard to get seconds today. You weren't here for the consent calendar. I thought we were going to have to take them individually. Okay, are there any objections? So ordered. Okay, we already did, I've lost my agenda. Already did the executive officer's report.
I may move we work on number 9.
Number 9, adjourn. Okay, meeting's adjourned.